What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Blade Dive. My name is Parker Bohan, and I'll be your host for the show. I just want to take a minute and say thank you so much to you, all the listeners out there. Without you, none of this would be possible, and it means the world that you're tuned in, so thank you. If you haven't already, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. It would mean a lot to me. And follow us on social media at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Tag us in your photos using the hashtag The Blade Dive. Okay, my guest today is Jess Richitelli. And if you don't know Jess is kicking it off for the ladies on the Blade Dive, but she's also kicking it off for the East Coast resorts too. So hats off to you, ma'am. Jess has held terrain park manager positions at both Squaw Valley on the West Coast and Cranmore Mountain Resort on the East Coast. Women are powerful and impactful leaders, and for this next generation of ladies who want to be in the industry, a visual representation is so helpful. And I guess the best way I could put it would be it's kind of hard to be what you can't see, and I'm dealing with that now as a parent to a 6-year-old little girl. We get into what it was like managing male operators and their egos. We talk about what it was like being a woman in a bit of a boys' club of an industry, the snow industry. We talk about the future, how resorts are investing their time, marketing, and what people are investing their time in. We talk about words to live by, and we definitely get into some of just the hilarious stories that come with just the events of managing a terrain park department. But we've got some pretty incredible special guests this episode, and you don't want to miss those. So if you're at home right now, you know what to do. Grab a drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine right now, turn up the volume.
Just go ahead and give it the juice. Already.
What is up, everybody? It's another day, another episode on the Blade Dive, and with me in the virtual booth this evening is just a queen in her own right, total badass, and has most recently held terrain park manager titles at Cranmore and Squaw Valley, and it's nobody other than Jess Richitelli. Jess, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Feeling pretty stoked.
Yeah, I'm super humbled and honored to have you on the show. You're really kind of kicking it off for the East Coast, which is sick. I'm super proud of that. We're trying to just really get everybody involved on the show from all aspects of the world, and that can be tough. So even just reaching over there to the East Coast, I'm excited about. So thanks for kicking that off for us.
Hell yeah. East Coast represent.
So we can chop it up a little bit, but what's so cool is that for those people that are listening right now, episode 1 was kind of a name drop for Brandon Dodds and really introducing me to Jess. And so learning more about Jess and getting to know her and kind of just realizing that, man, she's a massive impact in the industry and I need to know more about her. And I feel like the world does too. So let's get her on the show. And so she was gracious enough to make that happen. And maybe we just start from the beginning by painting a picture of what it looked like to grow up as Jess Richitelli.
I grew up, like you said, on the East Coast. I was born in Massachusetts. My mom was kind of, a biker chick, like an old lady. She moved out of her parents' house when she was a teenager. She moved to Cambridge, Mass. She started dating some club guys or whatever. She was a very young mom. She got pregnant when she was 19. And my dad, unfortunately, had passed away while she was pregnant. So then she moved back in with her parents, hung out with them for a while, met a different club guy. We moved to Rhode Island when I was 3. That dude wound up kind of being a piece, so she bounced. Then she dated some other guy who was also in the club, because apparently that's, late 70s, early 80s, that's what they do. I grew up in this little town, Warwick, Rhode Island. And then we moved to this other little town called West Warwick, Rhode Island, which some of you may know from the nightclub fire that Great White started. which was super sketch in a lot
Oh
of
shit. No,
dude.
I remember that now.
Dude,
Damn.
people from my high school got messed up, dude, like burned, people
Wow.
died, like shit was rough. It was not cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that was heavy.
that's the town I'm from. Like, wow, okay, sweet. There are other cool things from that town that weren't involved with that, but that was, that town's like 15 minutes of fame, unfortunately. Um, lived there until I was probably about like 23 years old. Um, Mom was kind of like a single mom. She bounced around with like the club, kind of like a less dramatic Sons of Anarchy situation. It's like, yeah, we hung out in clubhouses, but it wasn't like, Hollywood biker gang. Um,
Well, like just drawing on like the Rhode Island piece, because I mean, I'll be really honest. I've never been to Rhode Island. Never heard the story that you're talking about. I remember learning about that story, but like focusing on Rhode Island as a positive, like I always wanted to never been up to Vermont, never been up to Rhode Island, never been up to Maine area, Mass area, any of that. And I always had this vision of like this frothy coastline, cool boardwalks, things of that nature.
mhm.
Was that something that, I mean, you can ride your bike down there, right? I mean, did you motor down there at all?
Oh yeah. Well, so boardwalks are more like kind of like New Jersey. Rhode Island was like Newport, Jamestown, like port cities, like cobblestone, like very quaint little like East Coast fishing towns.
Got you. So like
Newport, Rhode Island.
a motorcycle would suck to ride on cobblestones. Like
Yes,
that,
but
that would be, wow. Yeah.
it wouldn't suck to ride by the beach.
Ooh. Did you do that at all?
On the back, yes.
Cool, cool.
As a child,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and there weren't seat belts. I was, born in mid to late 70s. So in the 80s, it was pretty lawless. Little kid on the back of a motorcycle holding on for dear life. But Newport, Rhode Island, Newport Jazz Festival, first summer X Games, I think it was. I was there. That was cool. That was awesome. Um, yeah, so Rhode Island was a cool place. Unfortunately, where I was from wasn't any of the cool places. Is like right smack in the middle, kind of a little whatever. But I have some really great friends that still live there, and it was great. Some of my friends that live there had moved to New Hampshire, which is kind of how I got involved in the whole snowboarding piece, and then wound up at Cranmore.
Yeah, totally. I gotta ask too, like, were you a beach goer at all
Oh yeah,
beyond what you were exposed to? You were?
I was. I I was. We were huge beach goers in the summer. We used to go to this place that was called Sandhill Cove, but now it's called Wheeler State Park. And they used to have these really cool like dunes, and you could like set up your little camp in the dunes, and the waves are really cool. The ocean's beautiful there, and lots of people surf. It's kind of more like knee to chest at best over there. I not so much of a great surfer, but I can
Well,
swim
and then
for
like
like a
Frank was
mofo.
talking about in his episode that he would go as far as Rhode Island, which is kind of why, like, I think he mentioned something. I'm probably gonna mess up the name here too, but Ruggles or something like that. Is that? I don't know if that's something you maybe remember. I was gonna ask you, but
I think that's a different one. There's a couple different spots in Newport that are like there's some breaks there, and they're the kind of spots that are like really kind of like beginner to intermediate spots, but like stormy situations
gotcha.
are really good there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never the surfer, and so it's always cool to talk to people who have been around that scenario. I was the guy eating the sandbar. I was not standing up on the surfboard. That's me, 100%.
Oh,
Who's that ginger kid out there on the sandbar? He can't
dude.
get back. Do you break his surfboard?
Yeah,
Is he
dude, that's
okay?
me. I,
And he's
I'm
in the
like
shallow part of that.
I'm like the queen of like, I got the squat. I got the squat. I stand up. I ate shit. I stand up. I ate shit. Like that was me. So I started spending more time in Providence instead of in the beach area.
Mm.
As soon as I got my license, we my best friend Janelle and I would cut school, and it's like beach or city. We're like city.
Yeah, totally. That's a tough sport, man. And to anybody that's ever pursued it and done it and been around that area for sure, like mad props. Rhode Island sounds cool. Like I said, I've always wanted to get to the Northeast and kind of be around there. My wife has, and so she's brought back stories, which has been really cool. She's been up there, but I haven't. I always bring up the food, man. I've definitely gotten some comments about Parker. You always talk about food on the podcast, but the the seafood, like I just would have been stoked to be on the coast up there in that area, eating things like lobster and shrimp and fish. And I gotta ask too, were you kind of the connoisseur of ever pursuing any of that with the fam?
Oh, I am a huge foodie. Huge foodie.
Cool.
So, and I cook a lot too. So,
Oh, right on.
100%, 100%. Like the seafood on the East Coast, it is rivaled by nothing. There is nothing that can touch East Coast seafood. And there is nothing, well, maybe not nothing, but very few things in the world that can touch the Italian food on Federal Hill in Providence,
Ooh,
Rhode Island.
I'm
It is
I'm writing this down right now.
unreal.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google that
It's not
place.
too late, Parker. You can get there and
Yeah.
you can experience this amazing food too.
I'll have to one day. Yeah, I'm all about it. You know, different experiences, different places. You got to check it all out.
Hell yeah.
That's who I've always been. So, yeah, no, that's so cool. Thanks for letting us in on that. I think it's a component sometimes that like it, you gotta own that, man. Like I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm from Tennessee. I'll definitely own it, and the food's okay there, but it's not the Northeast seafood. So where are the fish and chips? Bring that on,
Right.
please. Um, so you're growing up in what really was, you know, single mom, and
hmm
she's making it work, and you're cruising along and you're doing your thing, and pretty much push came to shove, it was time for you to get out of the house.
Yeah.
When that happened, do you think that's when you kind of moved on and kind of found snowboarding, or did you find snowboarding like earlier on than that?
So, my mom had a friend that I guess it was like high school age. He took me, him and his girlfriend took me up to Wachusett Mountain and rented skis and like checked it out. You know, he's like, I really think she's gonna like this. As like a biker's kid, you're not like super involved in sports because they don't really want to make friends with other parents and they don't necessarily want to encourage that. But this seemed like a singular sport, so it seemed kind of safe, and it was with her friend. I thought it was cool. I really liked the snow. It was night skiing, so that was cool. But dude, there's like so much stuff to skiing. I made it to the midpoint and I broke my rental poles in half because I didn't realize you had to like pick them up. And I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to get off there. So I'm like all ready, all stressed, ready to get off. I drop my poles and they like snap at the mid station. I look at him and he's like, oh God. And I'm like, shit, I'm such a kook. I didn't even know I was a kook, but I was a kook. And I was like, oh my God. So whatever, we get off the lift and he's like, well, I guess you're gonna have to go no poles. So I'm like, oh God. But you know, I high speed pizza wedged all over the place. And I was like, this is kind of fun. Snow's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
fun,
yeah.
you know. And then like I'd gone a couple other times, like a couple of high school ski trips. I think we went to like Smuggler's Notch, a couple other places, and that was super fun. But I always was like, man, there's just like too much stuff. And I had a bunch of dude friends that were all like into snowboarding. You know, it was kind of new for them. And they were all like skateboarders too. And I was like, oh, dude, that seems kind of cool. And it's boots and a board. I don't have to carry all the shit. Like
Yeah.
I was a professional yard sailor. Like when I fell, shit went everywhere. And I was like, I couldn't, dude. I was just like, oh, there's got to be something better than this.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, see other people snowboarding, and I'm like, maybe that's my jam.
Dude, that's awesome. But like the time frame there was what, like 90s?
Say it was like mid 90s, early mid, and then I kind of committed to it. I'd say late 90s. You know, I graduated in dating myself 93. So by the time I graduated high school, I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna snowboard. And I had a bunch of friends who had graduated a year or two before me and had moved to New Hampshire, and those guys were all snowboarders. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. So we started going on these like weekend trips up there. we started going on these trips with this snowboard shop in Warwick, Rhode Island that was called Underground Snowboard, and they do like these day trips. So fun. So we started going up there, and I remember I'd come home and like, dude, black and blue knees, practically broken tailbone, and my mom is like, "And you like this?"
Oh man, that's so good. I remember my first experience being just as painful, and I'm like, oh, I think I can do it again. Okay, I'll do it again. Yeah, it'll be fun. It's rad. I'll make it work.
Right?
Yeah, man. Like, were you okay? So, like, going back and kind of unpacking a little bit more about you, um, I definitely want to, let's let some people in on kind of who Jess Richitelli is outside of that terrain park operations world. So maybe if you were to describe yourself, and often when people do that, they talk about their job first, and then they start going down this trail of what they've accomplished, and that may be some definition of yourself, but what's one thing maybe outside of all the accomplishments that you've had in your career that is really a defining moment for who you are for Jess Richitelli?
Oh God, this question, Parker. Um, well, I was talking with Brandon about this question, and I actually like kind of stressed it a little bit. And I was like, I don't want to sound dumb. I was like, I want to sound like a badass. And he's like, dude, he laughed and immediately was like, mom. And I'm like, mom? He's like, yeah, dude, mom. I'm like, oh. He's like, sorry, you're mom. You're everyone's mom.
Mm.
And I was like, fuck, I am. I am everyone's mom. But, not just because I have a kid, like I'm an actual mother. But I don't know. I guess I'm always trying to be everybody's mom. And like that's part of my life, but it also kind of spills over to terrain park ops because like I wind up being the crew mom. I don't know. Like at Cranmore, we used to have crew dinners at least once a month at my house. I don't know. I get this like attachment to my people and I just like have to have their backs and look out for them. It's like some weird thing.
I don't think it's weird though. And then, we caught up a little bit about that question because I've tried to include that in almost every episode because it really kind of peels back a layer of who the individual is because they realize who they are. And I think that's just it. When you're worried about being cool, and I'll be straight up with anybody that's listening right now, like if you're trying to be somebody you're not, that's not cool. When you're being yourself 100%, that's when you're fucking cool. There's a really great,
Right?
there's a really great quote. It's, I'd have to reference it, and if I fudge it right here, but it's Philip Seymour Hoffman, and the movie is Almost Famous for anybody that's seen it out there. It's one of my favorite movies, but the only true currency we have in this world is when we are uncool, because you basically realize that you're nothing. You are literally a soul in this world, and you've got an opportunity to make an impact by just being yourself. And that is so real of you to just kind of drop that, because I think that's awesome. Like you being everybody's mom and wanting to be mom, that means you have a heart and you give a shit. And I think that's rad. So
Thanks.
hats off.
Thanks.
Hats
No.
off. I can't believe you were worried about that. That's amazing.
Ah!
I think that's great.
I feel like maybe sometimes I give too much of a shit, and sometimes maybe I have their backs too much, even when I shouldn't. But I don't know. It's all about community for me and friendships and relationships. And I have a tight group of friends, and it's, I guess I'm just like old school Italian at heart, It's kind of like you're either with me or you're against me. And if you're with me, dude, you're with me to the end.
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. Maybe before we get into the Cranmore stuff, I one of the other things that I try to get into with folks is words to live by, because I think those are also applicable to kind of who you are outside of your job or what you enjoy for a passion project, or maybe even what you're doing with your family. Like you're still an individual. So I'd like to know maybe what some words to live by are that Jess lives by. What would those be?
Oof. Let me think. I have a couple random ones, and I think they all kind of are somewhat repetitive, but like something that I try to live by is that, you are what you do, not what you say you're going to do. You can roll around telling everybody all the cool shit that you're going to do, and it's a bunch of bullshit if you don't produce. Like, don't roll around telling everybody what you're going to do. Just do it. You are who you say you're going to do, or you're full of shit.
Yeah, man. Those are definitely words to live by. I remember it's almost like saying stuff out loud. When you're saying something out loud, and it's an emotion or it's an idea. It's so hard sometimes, but the second that you do it, it's almost like you're making yourself follow through with whatever it is that you're saying out loud. And for those people that can't follow through with those commitments, man, it's such a learning lesson too at that time, because it's almost like a promise, right?
Right. No, dude, I think that's probably why, like, I'm like, oh, you are what you do, not what you say you do. Cause like, I feel like if I talk about it too much, I might back myself out of it. Like, so it's just better for me to act and not say. If I say too much and I let you in too much, then A, I might back out, or B, I might let you convince me that that's not what I should do.
Gosh, that's deep too. I could talk about this for hours. Let's keep going. I definitely think that from this, you get this world of this like blame, claim, and shame type of atmosphere sometimes with maybe it's a pride component. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the look at me and look at me. What's that movie? Man, Castaway, where Tom Hanks creates the fire and he's like, look at me, look at what I have created. And it's the fire.
Well said. Look at me.
I feel like that's what's happening a lot of times with just people in general. And it's just, I want to just give them a hug. I really do. I just want to give them a hug and be like, hey man, it's cool. I got you. Like, let's figure this out. That's amazing. Let's pat you on the back and let's keep going. Let's ignite that flame a little bit more. You mentioned maybe a couple more words to live by. I want you to get into those. Maybe hit us with those really quick, because there's some good ones too.
I mean, this one's kind of hallmarky cheesy, I guess, but it's like same. Don't talk, just act. Don't say, just show. Don't promise, just prove. At the end of the day, you're only as good as your word. And if you make a bunch of promises and you don't follow through, then you're just not as cool as you thought you were, or everybody thought you were, or you're full of shit because you're promising all this stuff that you can't make good on. So don't do it. Just, you got to act and you got to be real, or you're gonna get called out on your shit always.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. And I know you're not going to swing and miss. You're definitely going to hit it. But one thing that I think was so just kind of poetic in your childhood was that you had a mom that was just like, she was your one and done. She was your homie. She wasn't just your mom. She was your ride or die,
Hell yeah.
And, you guys had a bond that was pretty much unbreakable. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. And I was taken back to kind of hear your stories of how you described your mom, and it was really cool. But I want you to kind of like let us in on the mom thing. And to those people that don't have moms, like, I can be totally empathetic, but I want to hear Jess's story about how she was your rock. Like, you mentioned your mom being kind of that soundboard too for this leadership position. Like, what were some of those motivational speeches? And maybe that's where you got your words to live by. But what were some of those pep talks where you're just like, okay, yep, I'm going to hear it out. Damn it. You're right, Mom.
Well, sometimes they weren't always super productive, because my mom was a very unique individual, to say the least. She was kind of I don't take anybody's shit. I'm going to drink a couple pops and get a little rowdy and probably embarrass you for telling someone to go fuck off. Like, she was rowdy. So, I mean, apple in the tree, right? But, she was just kind of one of those people that she was like, if someone's going to tell you can't do it, yeah, you can. Figure it out, Like, she wasn't going to take no for an answer. She wasn't going to accept that, like, you should just be quiet and in the corner. And, like if it's like, that's not something a woman should say, she'd be like, yeah, I don't think so, and she'd be like, don't give up. And like, that's just kind of the things that were ingrained in me. And, like she wasn't perfect. We weren't super tight all the time. There were times that we definitely were against each other, but as I got older and she got older and we both kind of calmed down and stopped fighting each other, we realized that, oh, well, I guess I'm just like you. Everyone becomes their parents eventually.
Yeah.
I'm just a slightly less abrasive version, maybe, but maybe not.
No, that's so cool. I do have a couple of guest questions for you throughout the show, and the special guest questions are definitely a new addition to the podcast, and I'm excited to add that on there. And the people who are contributing are just as stoked as I
Okay.
am that they are. So without further ado, let's get into the first one, Jess.
Okay.
It's Isabel Falardu.
Hey Jess, how's it going? It's Isa. Long time. It's been so long I can't even believe it. Anyhow, I hope you're well, and I can't wait to listen to the podcast. But meanwhile, I was thinking my dad has had a huge influence on my love of skiing and snowboarding and being outside and being in the mountains. And I know that your mom was at least as rad as you from what I know. And I know she's had a big influence on you. And thinking of the influence of parents on kids, I was wondering, how would you feel if your son was gonna want to walk in your footsteps and himself start working in the snowboard industry and in the snowpark world? I can't wait to hear your 2 cents about that. Okay, take care.
Hell yeah. Wow. Damn, I don't know. I tell him, get the hell out of there. Don't do it. No. Man, oh, that's a good one. Thank you, Izza. Shit. I guess I would try to figure out, like why he makes that choice, what he's into, and then just kind of try not to helicopter mom him too much and just like be there to offer advice, help him bullet point his lists when he needs to go into meetings with his manager. And then just because that's what I do because I'm a super nerd. But I don't know. That is such a good question. Man, I guess I would just try to use my experience to help him understand the larger picture of things and understand how business works and that it's all a business, because we're all just so passion based that sometimes we forget that we work for people.
Wow. Yeah, that was just that's a hell of an answer. That's an amazing answer. I definitely want to thank Izza so much for contributing. I will say point blank that our kiddo asks us all the time about other women in the industry. And I point to Izza, I point to Jess, I point to Debbie Caves. Now I point to people like Harmony Johnson. And it's just it was really cool. I was so grateful that she was willing to contribute. And so thank you, Izza. That was awesome.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard her voice in so long.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Great soul, great human being. Yeah,
it really is.
The snow industry, that's what I like to call it. No business like the snow business. The snow industry as a whole it's pretty special to be a part of. But I want to know, what does being in the snow industry, specifically the park world, mean to you, Jess? What does that mean?
Being a woman in this industry, like when I started out, I was lucky, and like we said, I had a lot of opportunities. I have a lot of support, and I rose to a management position at a time where only a few of us were doing that. Like Izza, God, I'm not sure. I might be wrong on this. I think she may have been in the 30 under 30 for Ski Area Management magazine, but I do know, like, I got that issue of Sam magazine, and Izza was on the cover holding the oxyacetylene torch, and I was like, "Holy shit, she is such a badass." And I was lucky enough to get to know her a little bit, and I was like, "Man, like, this is so rad." Like, girls have been in this industry for so long, but to see these women starting to rise to the top and hold these positions that like were typically just held by men was super super inspiring to me. And the fact that she's also an amazing person, like dude, that's like just mind blowing. And then like to snag and hold that position at Squaw, like a legendary resort for 9 years, for better or for worse, like I definitely didn't do everything everybody hoped for, and sometimes I did more than people hoped for. But that was just like a culmination of how hard I worked to break into the terrain park realm and break into the snow industry. And it was just like, it really was. It was like, holy shit, this is like kind of a dorky dream come true if you want to be that way.
When you hit something really key there with, being a woman, being in the industry, rising to a position of management, and in some cases not really being taken seriously for what you wanted to deploy as a decision, or anybody taking you seriously for that matter, which is a bit fucked up in my opinion, but that's me. But the snow industry often has been referred to as a boys' club. And I know that may have changed over the years, maybe, but do you agree? What do you think?
I think it was. I think for people that aren't evolved, it might still be. But there are so many talented, strong women out there that are just completely busting ass. They're breaking through. There's just like there's no way to hold them down. It used to be like you had to yell twice as loud and hustle 3 times as hard to get taken seriously. But now it's like a lot more reasonable for anyone to be doing those positions. And instead of being based on whether you're a man or a woman, it's a lot more based on what kind of work you're doing and how you treat people and what kind of results you're, producing and what kind of teams you're building, instead of like, oh, she's a chick, she can't run a snowcat. Yeah, she can. It doesn't really matter. I know dudes that can't run snowcats. What difference does it make?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to fire him at you here because I think your point is spot on. And speaking of the snowcat and operators in general, the ego component is there, and we've addressed that. But the fact of the matter is that you've got to manage that person's personality sometimes, and sometimes it's a bit abrasive. I'd be curious to know if you thought managing an operator was a bit maybe like managing a 12-year-old or an infant child. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yes. But not always. But like you said, there's just like so many egos, so many hurt feelings. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're so invested in what they're doing and grooming and building. You might not always be stoked to hear some feedback if it's contrary to how you think a trail rides or how you think a jump is going to ride or a line flows. It's like comes back to that passion again, I guess, but it's like they're so passionate about doing it and building it and seeing their ideas come to fruition. If something's a little off, sometimes people get really upset, and it's like you said, you have to manage personalities. And it's not just like managing isn't just being like the puppet master and like laying out the budget and drawing up the grooming plan for the day. It's like managing personalities and figuring out like this dude, you can be like, yo, that shit sucks. This is why. And this other dude, you have to be like, well, it looks really great, but something was a little bit off, and so and so wrote it and they thought, well, you should come out and ride with them. And like sometimes you have to sugarcoat, sometimes you can just go hard in. And that's like hard, or difficult rather, for people to like manage all those personalities because it can become exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to hit the Cranmore piece as hard as you want to, because I've never been, but I do think it's a a niche, kind of like the OG in the OG department during like the early days of what were park programs. And so to be around something like that, like you were, maybe walk us through, because you talked a little bit how you got introduced to snowboarding, and then you got into kind of how you invested your time with your friends, and then got the board and all that jazz, and you started yard sailing less. But talk about Cranmore, Jess. Like, let us in there. Tell us how that began, what that looked like for you.
Well, Cranmore honestly was the shit. Like, those people were my family. Some of those people are still my family, like lifelong friendships. Like Frank talked about lifelong friendships. Dude, those people at Cranmore, it's just the craziest thing ever, because they were one of the East Coast resorts that kind of came up through terrain parks. Like, dude, they used to have hand dug pipes there and like big competitions. And then like the management kind of like went away from it. And I'm not exactly sure how or why. That was like in the time that I had just moved to New Hampshire, or right before. And then like I used to hang out with a bunch of dudes. I was like one of the few chicks that would ride with this like group of dudes. And I started working at this snowboard shop, and we were kind of like, your average snowboard shop on the cusp of going under, and like, I don't know, early like 2000, 2001-ish. And the Atomic rep got a job at Cranmore to kind of revamp the park program. And that came through the management, because we were part of this like Freedom Pass or whatever that was like Cranmore, Waterville, and Loon. And anybody that's in this whole industry knows that like Waterville and Loon were the shit. And so Cranmore is like the red-headed stepchild little sister of those mountains. So we got to go, kind of come along for the ride with the Freedom Pass and Booth Creek in SPT and build this new program. So there was like a super, super small crew. This Atomic rep, he was like, hey, you should come work in the park. And I was like, okay, this shop's about to go under and I'm not going to have a job. Well, I'm not going to have one job, because everybody in a ski town when they start out has at least like 2 or 3 jobs. So I had a nighttime job, like waiting tables and bartending. And then I had a daytime job at the store, and that place was going under. So this guy's like, yeah, you should come work at the park. And I was like, all right, sick. And it was like him, this other guy, and me. And we were the only full-timers. And then a bunch of like my dude friends on our little like snowboard crew, we all shredded together all the time, were all these like part-timers. And so that was like the beginning of me. And I was like late 20s then, like kind of a late bloomer. I came in 2002 into that program, but I was like 27, I think, which is, kind of old for a digger or like a person who rakes stuff.
So along the lines of like you and your crew, so there's 3 of you full-timers, right?
Right.
Okay, so the 3 of you are crushing it the best you can. Was that comparison piece kind of like a stealer of joy at some point in time, because you were busting your asses to try to be something just huge at really a place that was a smaller platform?
It definitely was at times, because we had a slightly different demographic. We wanted it to be cooler than it was, but we also did a lot of really cool stuff. And then like the manager, he was probably my age-ish then. He didn't come back. The assistant manager became the manager. I became the assistant manager. And this is all my second year. The assistant manager gets hurt. And then all of a sudden I'm the manager in my second year of parks. And then we started actually getting a budget and like getting more employees. But this tiny little mountain had 4 snowcats. We were only allotted half a shift, dude. Half a shift to groom 2 parks.
Wow. Okay, let's break that down. All right, let's unpack that for a second. So we've got 4 snowcats for an entire mountain, irrespective of how big it is, and you've got 2 parks. Yeah. How big were your parks? What was your footprint there that you were having to maintain for half a shift?
We had one smaller park that was just kind of like half a trail, quarter of a trail, I'd say. And then we had one top to bottom park. Okay. for the most part of the 9 years I was there, we did not have park specific groomers. We had mainline groomers that were equipment operators in the summer that didn't really get, love, or understand what we were going for or give a single shit.
Yeah. So really
that was fun.
the communication breakdown was there. Like
For
it was
sure.
just it was totally there. How did you fix that? Or did you
Well,
not fix it? Was it just you or whoever else kind of taking over and being like, "Hey, this is how we're going to give a shit. This is where the direction of this is going to go." How did that work?
there was a lot of go around for a long time because they sure as hell weren't going to let me into a snowcat. They weren't really going to let anybody from the outside get into a snowcat. So there was a lot of strategic planning, a lot of conferring with my associates at SPT and trying to strategize like how to manage the situation. And I spent a lot of time with the SPT guys riding shotgun and bringing that information back to the people at Cranmore and literally riding shotgun, explaining how to stack a jump, explaining how to like set a rail because they wouldn't let me try it. So I had to explain it to all these guys that A, didn't give a shit about the park, B, were just, used to mowing the lawn. And now all of a sudden I'm trying to explain transitions and how things are supposed to be. It was gnarly.
Yeah, and then I'm just gonna drop it. I'm just gonna throw the elephant in the room out there with that comment. You're a woman and you're with a redneck dude and you're trying to tell and explain to him how to build a park. How in the hell did that go over?
Oh, dude. I don't know, like a fart in church.
Yeah,
Like,
probably. I believe it. I mean, it's like it. Yeah. Sorry, I'll let you speak to it.
no, dude, it was like a fart in church. I mean, I basically had to convince them that I knew what the hell I was talking about. I had to like print photos off the internet, show them how things should look. There was a ton of handwork for my crew. Oh, my poor crew. Dude, the handwork that we had to do, the lack of finish work was unbelievable. Because these guys, like, some of them didn't care. Some of them did care and have pride in their work, but they just didn't understand it. And they weren't super stoked that I was explaining it to them. But, if you're sitting next to Elliot Cohn, you're sitting next to Corley Howard, you're sitting next to people that know what the hell they're doing and you're watching them, why wouldn't you bring that home?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. I agree. I'm not knocking it.
It's gnarly.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so, yeah, you've got kind of like the perfect storm scenario. You've got a situation where you love where you're at because it's more or less just two things. One, the underdog of the trifecta, but it's the cool place to be because it's not the top dog. It's homey, it's mellow, it's a good vibe, and you're trying to produce something really cool. And then in one instance with just somebody not coming back and then another injured, you're in charge. Yeah. And so stepping into that, I really want you to kind of speak to your passion and how you approach being a leader in a scenario like that. How do you rally a team? Probably the best way to put it.
Dude, sometimes I rallied them and sometimes I didn't. Like, I wasn't young by years, but I was young by maturity and lack of information and training. And that's kind of where like Booth Creek and SPT came in. Like, those guys provided so much like management training and strategic training and risk management training. Like, I could go on for days about all the training that I received from all those people who helped me and help lift me up and make me be a leader. Because, man, like, I had no idea what I was doing. I barely knew how to rake. And then all of a sudden I'm in charge. I'm like, shit, dude, what am I doing? And I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, but realizing that and owning that is the biggest component, because I'll be the first person to tell you that as a leader, I was not doing that. I was definitely making mistakes and not able to learn from them sometimes. We're only human. But the stigma, I feel like, that's kind of put on the manager, and the shift that I hope happens and that I get to witness one day, is that we have leaders out there that are stoked on learning the little things, what it means to have perspective. Because damn, if you've got somebody's opinion and you're saying it's my way or the highway, that person's opinion really kind of goes out the window. You might as well have not even asked. So, so
True.
like, it's so crazy. It's not crazy. It's a reality, but it's great that you can sit here and go, man, I got given an incredible opportunity early on because I had people that believed in me, which is boss. But at the same time, it's not like I was batting 1,000. I was totally making mistakes. But what was cool is that somehow or another, I guess that's maybe the next question. Who is propping you back up after you failed? Like, who is picking you back up and going, come on, you got this. You're good. Come on, let's go.
Dude, I could write like a list as long as my arm. Mike Batera, Jen Gunnarsson, Deb Moore, Ben Wilcox, the general manager at Cranmore, my crew, my mom, like so many people. I was so fortunate to have so much support and so many people that like just bailed me out and like were mentors to me. Like, dude, so many people aren't that lucky. Like, the list truly goes on. And if I, like, obviously if anybody listens to this and I forgot you, like, I'm sorry, but like,
I'll put them in the show notes. You just tell me who they are.
Yeah, right? Like, I cannot even tell you the amount of people that helped me out that were just like, dude, we have faith that you can do this, but you need to calm down, or you need to attack it this way, or you need to market it that way. Like, Deb Moore, marketing genius. Have you heard of Pat Moore? Marketing genius. He learned it from his mom. You know what I mean? Like, great people. Deb was the marketing director at Waterville, and Mike Batera was the park manager at Waterville when I met those guys. Then Deb went on to be the marketing director, I think, for the Freedom for all three mountains. And then Mike eventually moved on to SPT. So, like, we all knew each other so early on in this whole, like, Booth Creek and SPT and all these different things. Once SPT kind of branched out to the East Coast, it was just like, I had so much back. Like, if I wasn't getting what I needed from my resort, I'd go back to those guys and be like, I don't know why I'm not getting this. They're not going to make snow for me. They're telling me to go screw myself. This is what I think I should do. What do you think I should do? And they would just break it down. Like, I could call these people and they would just hook it up and help me out. And like, sometimes I was like, okay, yes. And other times I was like, no, I got this. But still, like, I had a network of people behind me that I can't even thank enough.
Yeah. And no matter who it is, having a soundboard to bounce ideas off of. I don't even think I really started keeping a journal until my wife just got me one for Christmas. So recently, but putting your thoughts on paper, having a soundboard of an audience that is the people around you that support you, and being able to talk to somebody, super key. So if you got that, and it sounds like you had that, that's awesome. That's so cool.
I was lucky.
So cool. I do. So we dove deep there, which is fantastic. That's what we're all about on this podcast. We are the Belay Dive. So we curl up mud every once in a while. We still have a load of questions that I want to tackle, but one of the things that we have on this show is the push road question of the day. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a wonderful opportunity for all kinds of people to send in questions. And what's daunting sometimes is that there are just so many of them. And then there are also people that want to specifically contribute. And so we try to tackle as many as possible, as fast as we possibly can. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we move forward with the push road question of the day. But if you have a push road question of the day, it can be broad, it can be industry topic, it can be specific, it can be a funny, sarcastic, hilarious question. Doesn't matter. We're excited for you to send those in. You can do that via social media. You can do that via email, either a DM, or you can jump on the website at thebelaydive.com, shoot us an email, get us your push road question in, and we will process it in the order that they are received. That's the best way I can put it right now. So without further ado, Jess, I will roll that intro and we will hit that question.
The push road question of the day.
That's right. The push road question of the day. Love that intro. I might be biased though.
Oh my God, she's so cute.
So today's push road question of the day, Jess, is from Mr. Brandon Dodds. And that is definitely a nod to his appreciation for you. I know he holds you in high regard, and it was absolutely incredible to hear him talk about you on episode 1. So I think that's just a testament to the relationship and how much you guys work together and accomplish. So, Brandon, thank you, dude. And Jess, here's your question.
Hey, what's up, Blade Dive? Jess, Parker. My question for Jess is, who is your all-time favorite snowboarder, and how did your admiration for him lead to a mural on your office wall? And then the second part would be, who really is your favorite female and male snowboarder? Hope you guys are good. Can't wait to hear this one, Jess. See ya.
Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Okay, so to answer the first part, he's referring to Shaun White.
Fantastic.
And although he is a great snowboarder, he's not my most favorite snowboarder. And there was a collage of sorts that started back in the Cranmore days, when he started blowing up and getting all these magazine ads. And it started with, I think it was a LibTech ad with like a dartboard, and then Shaun White's face wound up on the dartboard, and then a high-heeled sneaker went on him, and then there was a meme where Shaun White had some toilet paper and it was Shaun White, and it was like, so it just grew from there, and it was just like super funny, and I brought it from Cranmore with me and hung it up in my board at school.
Oh, man.
Oh my God, what a dick. That's awesome. Thank you, Brandon. He actually sent me Shaun White's video from today, I think it was today or yesterday, from a competition he was just in. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God, that is so awesome.
That's awesome.
Then,
so not to say that you were so you clarified that he's not your favorite snowboarder. So what is the answer to that second part of the question? He said male and female. Male and female favorite.
There are so many. All right, let me start with female. Well, I don't think I can pick just one, dude.
Ooh, really? Well, pick multiple. That's fine.
I'm gonna have to list a couple that like have been super influential in my life, that people are like, I used to love Erin Comstock, Hannah Beeman, Desiree, Marie Frank Roy, damn, I don't even know, there's so many. And then dudes, I guess my favorite male snowboarder, I can say 100%, and probably just because I'm an East Coast kid, Pat Moore. He is an absolute savage, the nicest person you've ever met, and his mom is the shit. So I could narrow that down. And dude, like, he is rad. Like, that dude just charges and has fun and just crushes. Like, I can't even say enough about him.
So cool.
But yeah. Thanks, Brandon, you bastard.
It's all in good fun. That's the best part about the push road question of the day. It can be fun, and
God, I love him.
That's what we're all about. We talk about real shit, but we also have some fun on the show, which is badass.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, huge shout out to Brandon. Thanks, dude. Jess, I don't think there's a wrong answer for that question, so you did great. I especially love the dartboard component.
Thank you. Oh God. That thing's crazy. That was one crazy collage that went a long way. No offense, Shaun. You're a great snowboarder, but we had some fun at your expense.
I think with success, you're gonna have the haters, so it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. But along the lines of success, and whatever that may look like, there's definitely kind of a plan, right? There's definitely a plan to be able to provide whatever the objective is. The consistent product being is kind of how I look at it with the offering that you're going to put out there for a park. But I want to know what your plan was in just the past to maybe establish a consistent and quality product every day for the guest. What did that look like?
Right. Well, know your audience, understand your management's expectations and directions, and then just do whatever the hell you want. No, just kidding.
I was going with that.
Really... No, I mean, I would love that. But no, I mean, you have to know your audience and not necessarily what everybody else tells you. You have to be out there and see your people, and you have to listen to your team, but you also have to know what's going on in the industry and know the trends. And then you also have to hopefully align with the management's direction, which has always been a struggle for me, to be honest. Because sometimes we're on the same page and other times we're not, and I have a tendency to push a little further than I should sometimes. But it's you kind of have to have an understanding of the larger picture, the 30,000 foot view of what you're expected to build as a cohesive situation. Your management may think that one of the two mountains that you work on is the larger features and the other one's the smaller features, and you might not agree, but a lot of times you're kind of shoved in a box and you have to work within certain parameters, and it's not always your choice. So that can be a hard pill to swallow when you are very passionate and prideful in what you do.
Yeah, and that goes back to that passion kind of being that double-edged sword that I mentioned too, because you got to make sure that your intention is right with that. And I don't ever want to hear it. Every time I hear it, I don't want to hear it, but every time I hear somebody, oh, passionate, I love that people are passionate. But when you start using that passion to be the excuse within the apology, that's when I'm just kind of a little lost for words, to be frankly honest. Yeah.
I mean, you can't just let it run you. You have to be smart about business, and you have to build relationships with people. The terrain park is needy, we're one of the few departments that touches almost every other department on the hill, and we need their support. We need snowmaking. We need the shop. Our cats go down, we need the shop. We don't want the shop piss at us so our cats get fixed last. We want them to respect us. We want them to think that we're professionals and we take care of the equipment. So, they're quick to fix our equipment. We want the snowmakers to respect us and we want to help them. And therefore they help us, every mountain kind of has its own dynamic, whether it's lift maintenance who kind of runs the operations or whether it's ski patrol that runs the operations. You have to have those relationships with all of those other departments that you count on to get your job done. And if you're just these rogue park kids that don't give a shit and do whatever you want, then no one respects you and no one's going to help you. And we always need help. Terrain park is kind of needy. We need a lot of support unless you're lucky enough to work in a mountain that's all about you, which is a very small percentage, I think, of most terrain parks.
As a leader, as an individual that was placed in a position, and we kind of already touched on it, but I want you to kind of hit on your skill sets, because it's not like because of the fact that you're a woman that you're any less of an equal. And I want to know if there was ever any pushback that you received because of that, while you were just trying to really apply what you knew was either right or the best plan overall.
Oh, wow. Well, hell yes, I got pushback. And I think it was like a mix between me being a park kid, quote unquote kid, park kid, and because I was a woman. Like we talked about at Cranmore, it was pretty old school. It was, a little rednecky in the shop world. So like, dude, they used to not even let me run the skid steer to move rails. I had to go over to the fucking snowmakers and be like, can you guys help us move these rails around? And I felt like such a loser. And so I was like, that's it, man. I got to learn this. And I'd made a couple friends in the shop that were like, oh man, this bitch is wild. We better just give her what she wants. And then I had some other people that were like, nah, dude, nah. So I had somebody show me how to run like the little skid steer. And I was like, yeah, this moves it up and down. This moves it back and forth. And the shop manager wouldn't sign me off, So I was like, I'm going to learn how to do this my damn self. So I went and I like went out in the yard when he wasn't around and I like drive around. And then finally I was like, yo, I want you to sign me off on the skid steer. He's like, what do you mean? You don't know how to run that? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, let's see it. And I knew how to run it. I went over, I picked up a rail, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh shit, okay. Signed off. Because A, the snowmakers didn't want to deal with our bullshit. They had their own jobs. And B, like, why wouldn't you just let us be self-contained, So
Yep.
like there was that. And then, dude, it was the welders. So we had bought a huge rail package off of SPT. When the big Booth Creek SPT thing came down, literally tractor trailer trucks showed up with rails. And each mountain got, a big group of rails, but it was your job to maintain them and it was your job to build new stuff, right? So stuff would break, snowcats would hit things, legs would fall off, whatever. They wouldn't even let us touch the welders either. It was ridiculous. So I was just like, you got to let us do this. So same thing. I used to have to bug the shop mechanics that are trying to fix snowcats to help me put like legs back on rails and stuff. And they're just like, nah, dude, this is ridiculous. So like this one day, my friend Sam's dad, he was a mechanic and he was just like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Cause I don't feel like dealing with this anymore. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing this. Like you've been here for a couple of years now. Like, all right, let's go. So he's like, all right, clamp this to this, clamp this to this, turn this dial here, turn that dial there. All right, melt this thing there. All right, good luck. Practice. I'm like, oh, sweet. Okay. And then one of the guys in my crew, Henry, he was going to school for like welding and manufacturing stuff. So he and I got a hold of this machine and he gave me some tips. And then he and I were the two people that started just like fixing and building all of our new rails. So it was just like we had to kind of take matters in our own hands because we're getting all this pushback for being park punks. And because I was a woman, because, God forbid, I couldn't like run equipment or like a welder or anything.
It's really at the point to where I feel like, and maybe this is the question. Do you feel like that you were really proficient at any point in time along your career, whether it was at Cranmore as the manager or whether it was at Squaw as the manager? Do you feel like you were proficient and efficient at your craft because you had to be that much better than the next dude in line who wanted your job?
Yes, more at Squaw than Cranmore, because eventually at Cranmore, I built my reputation and I got a lot of respect because I worked so hard. And it was kind of just a weird little, like you said, a little niche where like nobody necessarily was trying to like take over. But Squaw's a high profile mountain that has gone through many different changes and waves through parks and through the industry. So I was efficient and proficient at Cranmore, but I was still learning. So it was more towards the end, I guess. But when I rolled into Squaw, I was a lot more confident in my skills and I knew how to handle some of the things that people were throwing at me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. You basically got to the point to where you were comfortable with dealing with all the bullshit and you had enough of the skill set to be able to go, oh yeah, run into you before. Here we go. Got to answer that question. Yep. Got that answer for you. Here you go, bud.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just think it's unfortunate. I know that I've dropped a couple of those in the show and the episode already, but I just think it's really important to speak to because, you can have all the confidence in the world, but it really goes back to what you were talking about with words to live by. You talk all you want, man. Run your mouth. I don't care, but do as you say you're going to do. And the second that you don't, that's when I figure out who you are. And then that sucks for you, not for me.
Right? Unless you're on the other side of it. But no, I mean, and Squaw was very intimidating for me to roll in, because I built myself up at Cranmore and like those people were my family. I left all of my friends. I lived in New Hampshire for 12 years. I left all of my friends. My son was just about a year old. My mom was super pissed that I left. She's like, finally have a kid and now you're out. And then like I go and I enter squaw at the top of the food chain instead of at the beginning working my way up. So everybody's like, who the fuck is this chick?
Mm. What was it like being that's a really good one. What was it like being a mom doing all this? That's just so badass to me. That's just so badass. I think that's so cool.
It was not the optimum situation. Let's just put it that way. Typically you think of a mom as like the main caregiver. Now I know that's very stereotypical and it's like not necessarily the way it is anymore, but like the roles were kind of flipped. Like I was the absentee mom. It's like a lot of these guys you've talked to in these podcasts, like, Frank brought his family with him a ton, but there are times where he had to leave his family. Like Corley, Elliot, all those guys, they all left their family all the time. Like that was me. I was at work before my kid got up and at home after he went to bed a ton. Like for 7 out of the 9 years, at least on the regular at Squaw, I only had Sundays with my family because I worked every Saturday because it was the biggest, day of the week at a ski resort. So it was kind of gnarly because it was like my partner, Justin, like he had to fill in the gaps and had to work. It's like he didn't have the option. It was just like we moved here because of me because I wanted to move here. He had never been to Tahoe. He's like, yeah, all right, let's send it. And totally trusted me and moved here.
What a dude. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's important to acknowledge that. Like, when you're comparing apples to apples, you can't really just say, well, oh, well, it's a man's game, man's job. Well, I disagree. I think, as I've said before, women see things in a bit of a round room versus where men can often have blinders and see things in more of a box. And I think that the situation being applicable, I just give somebody a shot. So I think that doing it while you're being a mom that's even more of a commitment and a sacrifice. So yeah, hats off to you.
Thanks, man. It was cool. It was cool to be able to like bring my kid up at Squaw Valley,
I bet it was. I really bet it was. I've never been to Squaw Valley. I need to go. But how old was your kiddo while you were there?
11,
Beginning.
11 months when we moved
Wow.
to Tahoe City. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's pretty crazy. Like the crew, and eventually I wound up working at Squaw and Alpine. So the crew had to deal with it. Like my kid had a section in my locker where he had like all of his gear and crayons and markers and toys. And it was just like, there were days where I had to bring him in with me, and those were days, mostly office days or whatever, or I would pick him up after ski team and hang out and wait for the crew to come down at the end of the day. And, we're all downloading from the day and my kid's just like throwing shit around my office.
Yeah. That's real. Like life is sometimes like managing the noise and the chaos. I feel like sometimes.
For sure.
And when you're trying to manage all of that, it becomes more or less like your own symphony that you're orchestrating. Because at one point you've got all these different things that are happening and it's no longer multitasking. You're literally like waving the baton or whatever that thing is that they use to orchestrate their music. And you're doing that with whatever's going on in life, whether it be the family management piece or the children or the job. And sometimes they all converge onto one and come together and it ends up being this symphony that you're conducting. And it's just amazing how people get through that. I think that's like the most incredible component of your story is that you totally did that. Like you fucking did that. That to me is so impressive.
It was wild at times, There's times where like the phone's ringing, I'm getting yelled at by the mountain manager. My kid just shit his pants. The crew's coming down there mad because ski patrol yelled at them. Like I'm trying to send rumors out. Like, dude, there's like 100 things. Somebody's dog's in the office. Like there's other people rolling through. It was just like complete chaos at all times for years.
It's really eloquently put right there. That is chaos, and you're managing it as a mom. That's so awesome. I do want to hit the springboard. That was a good segue into how you really got that shot at Squaw. And maybe if you want to let us in on that story and how that opportunity came about, but maybe describe whether or not if you were either excited about it, nervous about it, what you were willing to sink your teeth into, what your plan was too. But just overall, really being introduced to the offer of the opportunity.
Oh, well, that's kind of a convoluted story, so to speak. Well, so as we know that Cranmore was kind of the springboard, and we had a couple of like really cool fun projects there. And as my career kind of got towards its end there, we had switched ownership, and the mountain just kind of was going in a different direction, so to speak, than what I was hoping that the park would go into. Like, two of the things I always wanted to do was get in a snowcat and learn how to like weld legit, which randomly has come full circle. The first time I met Mike Bennell at the US Open in Stratton, I got stuck driving him to the airport, which was actually kind of cool because I got off course maintenance. But I had to bring him to the airport, and we like shot the shit on the way to the airport. And I told him those were the two things I wanted to do that I was getting held back at my resort. And he's like, you just got to do it. So I had at that time started welding school, and I was actually thinking that I was going to leave the industry at that point. And because I had been like so self-taught with welding and stuff, I really wanted to pursue that as a possible career, and learn more about it. So I was like, maybe I'm going to be a welder and I'm going to give up this mountain stuff. I don't really know. We'll see where this goes. So I go to welding school. I get my certifications. Then I decide that I'm going to move to California, but I got pregnant while I was in welding school. So that threw a whole like wrench in the works. So I was still working at Cranmore. I was going to welding school 4 days a week. 3 days a week. I was working at Cranmore 4 days a week, still managing. And then I was like, oh, screw this. I can't deal with this shit anymore at Cranmore. It's just not where I want to be. They're not seeing my vision. Like I'm not understanding their vision. So it's time to part ways. And I'm going to move to California. I'm going to work at North Star with Chapani, and I'm going to sling sushi at a restaurant in Squaw that my friend manages. I had no plans of going to Squaw. I call Mike Patera, and I'm like, yo, this is what I'm doing. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, there's this job. So I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, Squaw's looking for a park manager, and I thought like you should apply. I'm like, do I want to start another park program from like the bottom up? Not that Squaw didn't already have their program. And I kind of knew that Squaw was potentially a little like stove is hot. Do you really want to touch it? Because there had been a couple of like random things that had gone for years because they were huge, and then they were down and they were up, and they've had a very tumultuous park career over the years. So I was like, oh, do I want to get involved in that? So I said, screw it. I went for it. And for the first couple of years, I used to tell Mike that he was a sandbagger because he sandbagged me into applying for the job.
I really hope Patera's listening right now.
I do too. But I mean, thank God he pushed me,
Yeah.
and it was like, it was great. Like I would not take it back for a hot minute. I would not take it back. But I was like, I was ready to walk away, and I was like, nah, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I was like, there were some tough times. I was like, shit, God damn it, Mike. But there were some times where he's like, God damn it, Jess.
The coolest part about people that actually support you is that they're usually the most frustrated with you too. They will vocalize very, very transparently what their feelings are. And I think that's great. Like, constructive feedback is sometimes elusive. And when it's not, it's usually because the person gives a shit about what's going on. So it's cool that you had him. It's cool that you had him there, whether or not he was there physically or you were talking to him on the phone or whatever it was. But there was a conversation that was had, and that's cool. Like that's great. That's part of the story. So I think it's fantastic.
100%, dude. He's been a mentor to me for years. Like I'm good friends with his wife. We played roller derby for 5 years when I moved here. Like The Pateras are the shit.
We should talk about roller derby too.
Yeah, roller derby was awesome. I wasn't ever as good as his wife. His wife is a true American badass. She will kill any of us.
Shit. Oh man, yeah, roller derby scares me. I would definitely get run over, walked all over, kicked with the skates, and then kicked out of the ring. And then would be like, look at that dude walking out of here with his tail between his legs.
Oh, dude, it's so fun.
Oh man.
So anyway, I digress. I'm sorry.
No, that was a good tangent. I liked it. Full tangent. So anyway, the opportunity, you get out there, you're taking it, you're ultimately saying, "Oh, yeah," but you're going for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And that was pretty much the plane that landed there. You're like, I'm in Squaw. And then let's talk about that welding certification piece and the component of how it helped maybe propelled you toward that job. Maybe that's what was the booster for getting it. I don't know. But I loved your point when you were with Benel, and then just in general in your mindset, you're going, there are two things that I want to do. I want my number one goal, number two goal, maybe they're both number ones, they're tied, but I want to learn how to operate a snowcat, and I want to learn how to weld. One of the two. If I can't achieve one, I'm still going to go for the other. And I want to make something really clear for the audience that's listening right now is, and this is my opinion, but I'm going to make it clear. I do not believe that you have to be the manager that has all the answers, that has every single skill set that's out there available to you to deploy. I don't believe that you should be the best builder, operator, or an operator at all for that matter. That's just what I believe. When you start dissecting what somebody's great at and you're looking at all the things that they're compartmentalizing their skills, and there's this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, and then that's how they're walking through their management piece, and they're going, I'm in the cat, I'm welding the rails, I'm doing the outside on hill boots on the ground component, I am literally micromanaging everybody around me, including the supervisors day and night. You may as well not have any employees. That's my take on it. I mean, that truly is my take on it. Long story long, and I'm landing the plane here. You had an opportunity to lead a team and be a part of something very cool from a very cool perspective. Your upbringing, your exposure to Cranmore, being around some of the best operators in the world, and then really deploying what you would learn from your welding experience. And I would say ultimately your people experience that you had from growing up. So do you feel like that was valuable? I know I just ranted there for a minute.
No, dude, 100%. Like, we put so much pressure on ourselves as managers, and especially as terrain park managers, to try to learn every bit of it. Because, a lot of us have this kind of like, I would never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. But I would always ask you to do something I don't know how to do because I don't know how to do it. I would try like hell, but you don't want me building a fucking jump.
Yeah.
But I also maybe don't want you building a rail. Maybe I don't want you raking a takeoff because you're really good in a snowcat, or maybe you're better at building rails. And honestly, there's a lot of pressure from outside. And I think because of the way that we view terrain parks and the way that we all not necessarily want to be the cool guy, or where the ego comes in, but you want to do it all. You want to learn it all. You want to be good at it all. And then you have all these outside influences being well, if you're going to be the terrain park manager, you should be able to hit every feature in the park. If you're going to be the terrain park manager, you should be able to build everything. It's no, dude, fuck you. You can't hit everything in the park. You can't build a jump, but all you do is bitch about the jump. It's not cool. It's not cool to put that pressure on people, and it's not okay to put that pressure on yourself. It's know your strengths and be strong, and let your team use their strengths, and then everybody wins. I mean, it just makes sense to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
I do have a really great question for you. It's our last guest question of the episode for you, and I'm going to throw that at you right now.
Okay.
I'm pretty excited about this one, so I am going to pump up the volume, and I'm going to play it for you now. Here it is.
All right, Parker. We're going to mix it up a little bit here. I know you asked me to ask the question, but I'm in a beautiful Big Bear Resort, and I've got two of Jess's finest, her favorites here. So I figured I'd take the opportunity to ask them. We're going to go with Dean Nielsen first. Dan, what you got?
My question would be, do you regret leaving the industry, and who was your absolute most favorite person out of any resort you've ever met?
Oh my God.
Hint. All right, on to Ryan Wormsbecker of Big Bear. What do you got for Jessica?
Hi, Jess. Hope you're doing good. I'd like you to tell the story of a couple dudes with bicycles in a hotel room somewhere in Reno. Miss ya. Bye.
Holy shit. I love those guys. All three of them. Oh my goodness. Wow. Do I regret it? Yes and no. I don't regret the daily bullshit, the corporate nonsense, and having to work for people that I maybe don't necessarily believe in. I do regret seeing people like Dan and Worm and Mike all the time. And my favorite of all time, I'm just going to be non-committal, just like with the snowboard, like favorite snowboarder question. I cannot pick one, but I will say my absolute most favorite people that I have ever met are 100% the Bear Boys, Dan and Worm. Those guys, I love you guys. You are the shit. The bicycles. So Annie Carr, I'm gonna give a shout out to Annie Carr. Annie Carr and I were rooming in Reno at a manager retreat, and Worm and Dan brought their BMX bikes to ride in like some skate parks, in Reno and cruise around and whatever. And we come back, we did our daily duties, and we did our meetings and everything, and we went out for dinner and we had a couple of drinks, and Annie and I are heading back up to our room, which is like a couple rooms down from those guys, and we roll up and those two yahoos are riding their bikes in the hallway of I can't remember if it was like the GSR or if it was, I don't remember which hotel, or Peppermill or something. And those guys are riding their fucking bikes in the hallway. Oh my God, I'm dying. And then we go to their room and they're riding their bikes in the room. Like, I'm not a BMXer, so I don't know what this is. But so Worm is trying to get up on his front pegs and bounce on the top of his front tire. And he eats shit, almost takes out the table, rolls up on the bed. Oh my God, those guys are the best. And I love that
Nice.
Vatera was with them just now. That is amazing.
Yeah, that was kind of the perfect storm, and I will say, huge shout out to Vatera.
Oh my God.
Totally caught me by surprise with that question. I tried to play it off all cool in the text messages too. I was like, "Yeah, man, thank you."
Oh.
But I listened to it and I was literally floored, because I have definitely admired Dan's work and definitely admired Worm's work, and just those guys are they're icons in the industry.
Amazing.
And so it was just so cool. I was so floored when I got that audio. So huge shout out to all three of them.
You guys.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Yeah.
I have had some of the most fun times of my entire life with those three guys, independently and together with them.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, that was awesome. So thank you to all three of you
God.
guys, man. That was massive.
Oh my God. Thank you to you for bringing them in. That was awesome. Dude, I'm literally crying because I just laughed so hard.
I think the best thing about the Blade Dive podcast is that it's all about being real. It's all about involving people and doing your due diligence on the back end to make it fun for everybody. So as the process refines itself and we can get people on board like Mr. Patera and Mr. Nielsen and Ryan, man, that's awesome. So yeah,
It's awesome.
So
Thank
cool.
you. Love you guys. That's rad.
If you were to chalk it up to maybe some of the best advice, and maybe it's specific to those three individuals because of how awesome that question was, but maybe it isn't, maybe it is. But what was some of the best advice you've been given in your career?
Oof. All right, let's think. All right, there's a couple things. There's two big things that like really resonated with me. One was from a little bit from Mike Patera and a little bit from my old general manager, Ben Wilcox. So basically, you need to roll in with your shit together. Or at least you need to make it seem like you have your shit together. I'm a huge fan of bullet-pointed lists of things that I want to make sure that I cover when I walk into the general manager's office. And when you're doing that, you have to be confident and you can't give up. Like, those are the things. Like, you can't roll in there like a screaming banshee flipping out. Like, you have to have your shit together and have your points well thought out.
Yeah. So you were excited that I gave you interview questions prior to the interview. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Because if I just had to go off the cuff, I would have just been laughing like a jackass like I was through that last question.
I think you're right, though. I think that you're 100% right. If you're reading the room, I'm going to go back to Mr. Wells. But if you're reading the room and you understand what you're walking into, you're going to go, yep, now is the time where I need to compose myself so that I can walk in the door and be the pro, so that I can say the right things, so that I can speak to my data, so that I can literally sit there and go, or stand there and have the pro conversation that says, hey, yeah, I'm here, I'm in the room, I'm present, I'm involved in the conversation, I know what I'm talking about. That's great advice. Yeah, absolutely.
And then like the other best piece of advice that I was given was also the worst piece of advice that I was given. So this one's kind of like a double-edged sword, to check your emotions. So yes, you should try to be objective and you should try to keep your shit together, like I just said. But you also need to use those emotions. You can't always check them. Like a wise person once told me, just because you're a pit bull doesn't mean you should always be one. And I disagree with that. I think you should always be a pit bull, but you have to be strategic about who you bark at.
I wrote that one down, got my pen out. There are opportunities for you to present yourself in a manner that separates someone and yourself from the individual that's playing the game and the individual that's definitely playing for real, for keeps.
Exactly.
We're playing for keeps.
Exactly.
And I think that applies to leadership, you know, and I this is a question that gets dropped every show. With respect to just resort management, project management, and what that looks like for you. I know you've talked about a lot of sound examples that have helped prop you up and led you along the way, but maybe we just stick to the leadership aspect of it and what that looks like as far as project management or resort management. So what does that look like for you? Leadership, great leadership, any aspect of it. Doesn't even matter if it's terrain park. What does that look like?
I feel like it's kind of for me, I like sat here and thought about this for a minute and I came up with like 4 things: organization, communication, collaboration, and gratitude. Those are like my, as they say, pillars, I guess.
Great way to put it.
Right? Those are my personal pillars, I guess, because I feel like you have to have a solid plan, right? If you're the manager, it's your job to do the legwork. It's your job to figure out the logistics. It's your team's job to execute the tasks. They don't need to be worrying about that bullshit. They need to be focusing on their job. It's your job to make their job easier. I mean, right?
Yeah, very well put. I'm falling in line with that. What do you want me to do?
Right? Like, what do you want me to do? Okay? Like, do I have to worry about, like, if I'm allowed to be in this trail? No, I already cleared that shit. You're on that trail. Run it. Can I crack into the snowmaking? Yes. We let it sit for a couple days. It's good to go. We got clearance. Like, whatever the weird logistics, or if you're working like an event or whatever, and there's a big build going on, and you have an outside contractor coming in, and you have your interior crew coming in, and all the machines and all the people and the closures and the radios and all the bullshit. That's your job. That's not their job. Their job is to build the course. That's what they should focus on. So that's, I guess, just an example of that. I get riled up about this shit. Sorry.
I think along the lines of that, I want to hit kind of where you have transitioned out of the industry, but still deployed and used a lot of the skill sets that you've had and obtained within the industry to be so good at what you do. I want you to kind of speak to maybe like what your role is and how you're involved, and you're really still kind of leading a team.
I guess.
I mean, you are.
I guess
You
I
really
am.
are. Yeah.
I don't know how good I am at this new endeavor. I'm trying like hell. So kind of circling back to the whole like fabrication and welding background that I was kind of trying to slide into before Batera sandbagged me into going into squaw. No, just kidding, Mike. I love you. Thank you. I actually am a high school welding teacher now at Truckee High, and I kind of had this weirdo like dream a couple years ago when things were kind of like changing a little bit at squaw, and I was like not feeling as fulfilled, and kind of like the thing that Frank said, it's like make a plan. I didn't want to be a mountain manager. I didn't spend the time in a cat to really like learn the skills that I needed to be a builder. I didn't want to be a director of operations. So what did I want to be? Because I did know that I wasn't exactly stoked in the direction that squaw was going, perhaps, and maybe it just wasn't for me anymore, and I had kind of like hit the ceiling or whatever. So I was like, what do I want to do? And a couple years ago, this like high school shop teacher job came up, and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool, like be a high school shop teacher. And then through my relationships, back to that relationship piece we've been talking about through all these podcasts and the friendships we've made, I went to Truckee High. Jeff Beliba from Burton brought me and Luke, who was the assistant manager also at Squaw, to Truckee High to check out this new program called Gone Boarding. And so this program was started in like Michigan or whatever, and it's a board sports program, and it's a manufacturing program. So it's like a tech ed program that these schools have, and Truckee High had just built this new tech ed wing, and they had started this program. Beliba was meeting with us about some like Riglet Park stuff. He's like, you guys got to check this shit out. It's super cool. So we go over there with Jeff and we check it out. It's like the grand opening of their new wing and everything. And I meet the principal, and she's like, well, what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Well, do you weld? And I'm like, well, I don't really weld that much anymore because I'm just kind of hanging out in the office more than anything. And she's like, well, would you ever consider being a welding teacher? We're looking for a welding teacher. And I was like, I'm like, this is kind of really good timing. But it all circles back to the East Coast, to snowboarding, to terrain parks, to my industry, to all the contacts and people that I met. It's like everything had come full circle, and everything that brought me in got me out. Isn't that crazy?
So poetic, though. All put together, it's pretty poetic.
It's just pretty crazy. And it's like, I don't know. I thought it was really cool. I'm kind of stoked. I'm shaping the minds of the youth for whatever that's worth. They're very strange. I mean, most people don't love high school, and I'm the crazy person that decides to go back to high school.
Oh man, that was a great quote. I love that. No, it's a challenge, and I think that you're spearheading it as best you can,
Yeah.
And anything that you're absorbing and taking on, it's always going to be a challenge.
And it's
always
new. It's a new program. It's, I'm building this program. They never had anything. I started with like 2 welders and like 24 kids. I'm like, holy shit, how are we going to do this? So now we're like up to 7 welders, and I still have like 20 something kids, but like I don't know. I guess it was, like you said, it's a challenge, and it's not like I wasn't challenged at Squaw anymore, but I wasn't challenged by the things that were fulfilling me.
Yeah, and that's important because too, when you're setting out on a goal or a task, whatever it is, and you're trying to accomplish it, it's like everybody else has talked about on the show. You realize that you've reached where you need to be, and you've got to have something else that can propel you on to what's next. I think it's okay to be that way. Some people stay in the same job for 50 years. I'm just not programmed that way. Thank goodness my wife can put up with that shit.
Right?
I do want to know what you think the future looks like, and you can tackle it from a broad perspective. You can tackle it from equipment. You can tackle it from managerial, operator, however what that looks like. But from the guest, from the resort. But I would really be interested to know what Jess Richitelli thinks about the future within the ski industry.
Oof. Man, my crystal ball's broken.
I wish I had one of those too.
Right? Well, it seems like technology and equipment is changing and progressing more quickly than anything. So I feel like there is the ability to do so much more and be so efficient. And like, I feel like that is a really great framework. But I feel like the general ability level of the guest is decreasing. So we're catering more and more to that. And, like the dinosaurs will die theory. It's like, I feel like we're split down the middle, kind of. It's like there's this super group of old school people that just crush it and want huge parks. And then there's this other group of like really aggressive, like amazing riders who also want really good parks, but they're becoming less and less. And then like the majority of people have so many other things to do with their time that they're just like, I don't know exactly. I guess that they're just like changing the way that parks look, changing the way that the features look. There's less of the traditional park stuff, and just the general public ability level is much lower. And it's like a small little niche of the people that can like really shred and throw down.
Yeah, hell yeah. No, that was well said. Like it's far more commercialized than it was prior.
I mean, there's so many other things in the world to do besides like ski and snowboard. And, we're like competing against iPads and, Nintendo Switches and gaming. Like, dude, you're a gold medalist on your Nintendo Switch, but you can't even hit a flat box in real life. So it's just like, I feel like we're more catering to that. But also, if we don't cater to that, we're not building the feeder program. So it's like, I'm very conflicted because I see it moving to the lesser skilled side, and I don't want there to be a loss of the aspirational piece and to not cater to the people that can hit the advanced features, if that makes sense.
Jess, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it's a big ask. It means a lot. And I think that your words will just be forever appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm stoked to have gotten to tell my story.
Wow. Huge shout out to Jess Richitelli. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming on the podcast. What an incredible conversation. One of the coolest points that I think Jess made was that you're only as good as the sum of your parts, and you've got to be able to listen just as much as you talk. But the biggest component I took away from it was you got to do as you're going to say. That's how you're going to prove yourself. And I think being a good leader does not mean that you have to be an operator. It does not mean that you have to be able to build the best feature in the world or be any good behind the sticks. You've got to be willing to have some empathy, hear everybody out, listen to opinions, and build a good team. You got to be able to invest in that team. You've got to trust them, and you've got to have the team hold you accountable and you hold the team accountable. I mean, it works both ways. So It's impressive what Jess has done in the industry, and I just think it is a really good platform and pedestal to have her on for the other women that want to pursue just as she has. So for that, Jess, everybody's super thankful. Thanks for being a badass. Thank you. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I would be honored if you would. Follow us on social media at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Tag us in those photos. Definitely don't forget to send in your push road questions of the day. And you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Please fill your machine with diesel at the end of your shift.